Hello, I'm Dr. Mike Cadden, Professor of English at Missouri Western State University, and I welcome you to the 24th annual reading of Banned and Challenged Books, our first cyber event in the series, and COVID has tried to ban the banned book reading, but we counter with Zoom, as everybody is. So the American Library Association has, since 1982, designated the fourth week of September as Banned Books Week. And today we read from books that have been either challenged or banned in United States schools or public libraries. And we meet to do this in order to celebrate the fact that we can, at least as of this afternoon, because the Supreme Court's making a new decision. The readers have chosen books that they care about, and each reader will share with you a brief case or two involving the book, perhaps a reason or two for choosing the book, and then they'll read for a few minutes from the book itself. The passage may have little to do with the reason that the book had been challenged or banned. It may just be that the reader wants to share a particularly favorite, wonderful passage with you that is great to read out loud. But sometimes those two reasons come together. So we'll just have to wait and see. This is apart from just being a celebration of the freedom of expression, an opportunity to be read to. And we forget that pleasure as soon as our parents and teachers deem us too old for picture books. This is perhaps one of the great tragedies of literacy, that people stop reading to us. So please consider this just a return to a familiar pleasure of being read to at the close of a long, hard day. And because it's a recorded Zoom meeting, we'll never know if you nod off during it. So I now want to show you a picture of the program, so that you'll have an opportunity to see the order in which people will be reading. Before we get started, I'd like to thank all of our readers in advance, Dr. Susan Martins, Dr. Elizabeth Wallington, and Missouri Western Library Director Sally Gibson as my co-conspirators. And I'd like to thank Mr. Jim Mulder from the Missouri Western Library for his work compiling the information about the challenges. We're sponsored by the Departments of Communication, Education, and the Missouri Western Library, as well as Prairie Lands Writing Project. And so, without further introduction, I'm going to begin by reading something from Mr. Walt Whitman. Today I read to you from Walt Whitman's volume of poetry, Leaves of Grass, and the book was banned in Boston, and booksellers agreed to neither sell nor advertise the book. Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass created an uproar from the moment it was first published in 1855, and all through its subsequent 9 editions. This classic work of poetry was deemed obscene or too sensual, shocking because of its frank portrayal of sexuality and its obvious homoerotic overtones. So I'm going to read to you specifically from the conclusion of the long poem from Leaves of Grass called Song of Myself. And here the poet ends bidding us farewell, and with the image of himself dissolving into all creation. I have said that the soul is not more than the body, and I have said that the body is not more than the soul, and nothing, not God, is greater to one than oneself is. And whoever walks a furlong without sympathy walks to his own funeral dressed in his shroud. And I, or you, pocketless of a dime, may purchase the pick of the earth. And to glance with an eye or to show a bean in its pod confounds the learning of all times. And there is no trade or employment, but the young man following it may become a hero. And there is no object so soft, but it makes a hub for the wheeled universe. And I say to any man or woman, let your soul stand cool and composed before a million universes. And I say to mankind, be not curious about God, for I, who am curious about each, am not curious about God. No array of terms can say how much I am at peace about God and about death. I hear and behold God in every object, yet understand God not in the least. Nor do I understand who there can be more wonderful than myself. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God in each of the 24 hours and each moment then. In the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face in the glass. I find letters from God dropped in the street, and every one is signed by God's name. And I leave them where they are, for I know that wheresoever I go, others will punctually come forever and ever. And as to you, death, and you bitter hug of mortality, it is idle to try to alarm me. To his work without flinching the Akashur comes. I see the elder hand pressing, perceiving, supporting. I recline by the sills of the exquisite flexible doors and mark the outlet and mark the relief and escape. And as to you, corpse, I think you are good manure, but that does not offend me. I smell the white, sweet-scented roses growing. I reach to the leafy lips. I reach to the polished breasts of melons. And as to you, life, I reckon you are the leavings of many deaths. No doubt I have died myself 10,000 times before. I hear you whispering there, O stars of heaven, O suns, O grass of graves, O perpetual transfers and promotions. If you do not say anything, how can I say anything? Of the turbid pool that lies in the autumn forest, of the moon that descends the steeps of the soughing twilight, toss sparkles of day and dusk, toss on the black stems that decay in the muck, toss to the moaning gibberish of the dry limbs. I ascend from the moon, I ascend from the night. I perceive that the ghastly glimmer is noonday sunbeams reflected, and debouch to the steady and central from the offspring, great or small. There is that in me, I do not know what it is, but I know it is in me. Wrenched and sweaty, calm and cool, and then my body becomes, I sleep long. I do not know it, it is without a name. It is a word unsaid, it is not in any dictionary, utterance, symbol. Something it swings on more than the earth I swing on. To it, the creation is the friend whose embracing awakes me. Perhaps I might tell more. I plead for my brothers and sisters. Do you see, oh my brothers and sisters, it is not chaos or death, it is form, union, playing. It is eternal life. It is happiness. The past and present wilt, I have filled them, emptied them, and proceeded to fill my next fold of the future. Listener up there, what have you to confide to me? Look in my face while I snuff the sidle of evening. Talk honestly. No one else hears you. And I stay only a minute longer. Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. I concentrate toward them that are nigh. I wait on the door slab. Who has done his day's work? Who will soonest be through with his supper? Who wishes to walk with me? Will you speak before I am gone? Will you prove already too late? The spotted hawk swoops by and accuses me. He complains of my gab and my loitering. I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yawp over the roofs of the world. The last scud of day holds back for me. It flings my likeness after the rest, and true as any on the shadowed wilds. It coaxes me to the vapor and the dusk. I depart as air. I shake my white locks at the runway sun. I effuse my flesh in eddies and drift in lacy jags. I bequeath myself to the dirt to grow from the grass that I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. If you will hardly know who I am or what I mean. But I shall be good health to you, nevertheless, and filter fiber your blood. Failing to fetch me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere waiting for you. It's Mr. Whitman. And so next we have the Honorable Bill McMurray, Mayor of the City of St. Joseph, who will be reading from the Bible.
Well, thank you, Mike. You can all hear me okay, I presume? Okay. A 1982 study of 17 surveys conducted of school libraries during the previous 2 decades found that the presence or use of the Bible in schools had been challenged by students, parents, teachers who thought it was illegal or who objected to its interpretation. In 1989, an elementary school in Omaha, Nebraska, banned the reading or possession of the Bible on school premises. In a settlement of a suit in federal court that never came to trial, it was agreed that students could read the religious literature of their choice at school, but during free time. In May of 1981, a Christian fundamentalist group burned copies of the Living Bible in North Carolina. In 1992, in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, Independent School District, an atheist seeking to turn the tables on the religious right challenged the use of the Bible, declaring that the lewd, indecent, and violent contents of the book are hardly suitable for young children. In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, protesters attempted to remove the Bible from the West Shore schools and said there are more than 300 examples of obscenities in the book, and objected that it contains language and stories that are inappropriate for children of any age, including tales of incest and murder. Though the Bible is among the most censored books in history, it's been translated more times and into more languages than any other, and has outsold every book in the history of publishing. In the English language alone, there are some 450 different editions. The long history of Bible censorship has had little impact on its availability and influence today. Now, there are a lot of things in the Bible I could read, but I thought we're coming up on All Saints' Day in November, and this is the reading that in the Roman Catholic Church is the gospel reading for All Saints' Day. It's from the Gospel according to St. Matthew, a reading that we sometimes call the Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and utter every kind of evil against you falsely because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven." Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next, we have Ms. Karen Schultz, who is the Washington Park Branch Manager of the St. Joseph Public Library. She will be reading from Suzanne and Max Lang's Families, Families, Families.
Yes, and I chose this children's book because it has a very important message to share with every reader that every family is different, but the commonality is love. Families, Families, Families by Suzanne Lang and Max Lang was one of 4 books that was challenged by the public petition in Orange City, Iowa's public library. The concern articulated by the Coalition of Conservative and Evangelical Community members was that the library was distributing LGBTQIA+ materials to pre-K children using tax dollars. They requested that the books be shelved separately and segregated from other library materials. One local religious activist checked out the 4 books and then burned them live on Facebook. Since then, over 200 books were donated to the library, and GoFundMe and Facebook fundraisers raised thousands of dollars to replace lost and damaged materials. All titles have been retained. Families, Families, Families by Suzanne Lang and Max Lang. Some children have lots of siblings. Some children have none. Some children have two dads. Some have one mom. Some children live with their grandparents, and some live with an aunt. Some children have many pets, and some just have a plant. Some children live with their father. Some children have two mothers. Some children are adopted. Some have stepsisters and brothers. Some children bunk with their cousins. Some have a mom and a pop. Some children's parents are married, and some children's parents are not. So no matter if you have a ma, a paw, a hog, this llama, 10 frogs, a slug, a cousin named Doug, a great grandma Betty, and a great Aunt Sue, uncles Hal, Al, and Sal, and Uncle Lou too, 1 stepsis, 3 stepbros, 2 stepmoms, and a prize-winning Rose, a robot butler to serve you tea, the world's biggest grandpa, or whatever it may be. If you love each other, then you are a family. The end.
Thank you, Karen. Next, we have Ms. Jen Hughes, who is representing the Prairie Lands Writing Project, and she's going to be reading from The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas.
Hi, I'm Jen Hughes, and as Dr. Cadden said, I'm going to be reading from The Hate You Give, and it was written in 2017, so it's fairly recent. It's been an award-winning and best-selling young adult fiction about the shooting of a young, unarmed Black man by a white police officer. The focus on the novel is on the aftermath of the shooting and how his friend Star Carter witnesses and deals with the aftermath. The reader gets the perspective of the witness and the issues of racism and violence that she deals with. And I chose this novel to read from because of the current conflicts in our society. And I find it's important to find resources for my students that are pretty current. Even though it mimics current events, it has been challenged and banned on several occasions. The Katy, Texas School District removed it from the libraries after a parent complained about profanity in the book. And the author, Angie Thomas, retweeted her dismay about this. She said, "I'm saddened to hear that a school district in Texas banned The Hate You Give, but I'm also empowered. You're basically telling the kids of the Garden Heights of the world that their story shouldn't be told. Well, I'm here to tell them even louder. Thanks for igniting the fire." It was then challenged again in February 2018 at a Springfield, Missouri middle school due to the language and sexual situations and a lack of permission slips. The school district pulled it and asked to have the book reviewed and followed up with new permission slips. However, even with the new permission slips, the book was pulled again and more complaints were made. And right now there's still not a current status on whether it's allowed. It was then called to be banned again by the Fraternal Order of Police in South Carolina in the town of Mount Pleasant, who asked that it be removed from the Waldo High School's list of optional reading assignments for incoming freshmen, citing that it was an almost indoctrination of distrust of police, and we've got to stop that. I had a really hard time choosing a selection from the book because there are a lot of good points in it, but I have one that kind of goes to what the title is about, The Hate You Give. Khalil's Impala is nice, not all flashy like some guys' cars. I didn't see any rims before I got in, and the front seat has cracks in the leather. But the interior is a tacky lime green, so it's been customized at some point. I pick at a crack in the seat. Who you think got shot? Khalil gets his hairbrush out the compartment on the door. Probably a king lord, he says, brushing the sides of his fade. Some garden disciples came in, and when I got there, something was bound to pop off. I nod. Garden Heights has been a battlefield for the past 2 months over some stupid territory wars. I was born a queen because Daddy used to be a king lord, but when he left the game, my street royalty status ended. But even if I'd grown up in it, I wouldn't understand fighting over streets nobody owns. Khalil drops the brush on the door and cranks up his stereo, blasting an old rap song Daddy has played 1,000,000 times. I frown. Why are you always listening to that old stuff? Man, get out of here. Tupac was the truth. Yeah, 20 years ago. Nah, even now. Like, check this. He points at me, which means he's about to go into one of his Khalil philosophical moments. Pac said thug life stood for the hate you give little infants bucks everybody. I raise my eyebrows. What? Listen, the hate you, the letter U, give little infants bucks everybody. Thug life. THUGLIFE. Meaning what society gives us youth, it bites them in the ass when we wild out. Get it? Damn. Yeah. See? Told you he was relevant. He nods to the beat and raps along. But now I'm wondering what he's doing to fuck everybody. As much as I think I know, I hope I'm wrong. I need to hear it from him. So why have you really been busy, I ask. A few months ago, Daddy said you quit the store. I haven't seen you since. He scoots closer to the steering wheel. Where you want me to take you? Your house or the store? Khalil, your house or the store. If you're selling that stuff, mind your business, Star. Don't worry about me. I'm doing what I gotta do. Bull, you know my dad would help you out. He wipes his nose before his lie. I don't need help from nobody, okay? And that little minimum wage job your pops gave me didn't make nothing happen. I got tired of choosing between lights and food. I thought your grandma was working. She was. When she got sick, them clowns at the hospital claimed they'd work with her. 2 months later, she wasn't pulling her load at the job. Because when you're going through chemo, you can't pull big-ass garbage bins around. They fired her. He shakes his head. Funny, huh? The hospital fired her because she was sick. It's silent in the Impala except Tupac asking, who do you believe in? I don't know. My phone vibrates again. Probably either Chris asking for forgiveness or Kenya asking for backup against Denasia. Instead, my brother's all caps text appears on the screen. I don't know why he does that. He probably thinks it intimidates me. Really, it just annoys the hell out of me. Where are you? You and Kenya better not be at that party. I heard somebody got shot. The only thing worse than protective parents is protective older brothers. Even Black Jesus can't save us from 7. Khalil glances over at me. 7, huh? How'd you know? Because you always look like you want to punch something when he talks to you. Remember that time at your birthday party when he kept telling you what to wish for? And I popped him in his mouth. Then Natasha got mad at you for telling her boyfriend to shut up, Khalil said, laughing. I rolled my eyes. She got nerves with her crush on 7. Half the time, I thought she came over just to see him. Nah, it was because you had the Harry Potter movies. What we used to call ourselves? The Hood Trio? Tighter than the inside of Voldemort's nose. We were so silly for that. I know, right? He says. We laugh, but something's missing from it. Someone's missing. Natasha. Khalil looks at the road. Crazy, it's been 6 years, you know. A won't sound startles and the blue lights flash in the rearview mirror. Against that, that's from the hate you give.
Thank you, Jen. Next, we have Ms. Kylie Thomas from the KQ News, and she'll be reading from Tequila Mockingbird by Harper Lee.
Hi everyone, I'm Kylie Thomas. Thanks for inviting me to this reading. I chose Tequila Mockingbird by Harper Lee for my banned book. It's actually one of my very favorite books. I even have it as a graphic novel. It's an American classic, often a part of school curriculums, the ones that haven't banned it. I believe the heart of this novel still reigns true today on its discussions of race and challenging one's preconceptions. And the novel actually turned 60 years old this past July. Tequila Mockingbird has been banned by schools time and time again, school districts around the country, including here in Missouri, for its use of racial slurs, profanity, and often the book's purpose to challenge race in America has historically been met with community outrage. So I'm choosing to read a passage where Dill, Jim, and Scout on their first adventure with the Radley house. Let's try to make him come out, said Dill. I'd like to see what he looks like. Jim said if Dill wanted to get himself killed, all he had to do was go up and knock on the front door. Our first raid came to pass only because Dill bet Jim the gray ghost against 2 Tom Swifts that Jim wouldn't get any farther than Radley Gate, In all his life, Jem had never declined a dare. Jem thought about it for 3 days. I suppose he loved honor more than his head, for Dill wore him out easily. You're scared, Dill said the first day. Ain't scared, just respectful, Jem said. The next day, Dill said, you're too scared even to put your big toe in the front yard. Jem said he reckoned he wasn't. He'd pass the Radley House place every school day of his life. Always running, I said. But Dill got him the third day, when he told Jem the folks in Meridian certainly weren't as afraid as the folks in Maycomb, that he'd never seen such scary folks as the ones in Maycomb. This was enough to make Jem march to the corner where he stopped and leaned against the light pole, watching the gate hanging crazily on its homemade hinge. I hope you've got it through your head that he'll kill us each and every one, Dill Harris, said Jem. Don't blame me when he gouges your eyes out. You started it, remember? You're still scared, murmured Dill. Jem wanted Dill to know once and for all that he wasn't scared of anything. It's just that I can't think of a way to make him come out without him getting us, said Jem. Besides, Jem had his little sister to think of. When he said that, I knew he was afraid. Jem said his little sister to think of the time I dared him to jump off the top of the house. If I got killed, what'd become of you? Then he jumped, landed unhurt, and his sense of responsibility left him until confronted by the Radley place. You gonna run out on a dare? Asked Dill. If you are, then Dill, you have to think about these things, said Jem. Let me think a minute. It's sort of like getting a turtle come out. How's that? Asked Dill. Strike a match under him. I told Jem if he set fire to the Radley house, I was gonna tell Atticus on him. Dill said striking a match under a turtle is hateful. Ain't hateful, just persuades them. It's not like you chunk him in the fire, said Jem. How do you know a match don't hurt him? Turtles can't feel, stupid, said Jem. Were you ever a turtle, huh? My stars, Dill. Now let me think. Reckon we can rock him? Jem stood in thought, so long that Dill made a mild concession. I won't say you ran out on a dare. I'll swap you the gray ghost if you just go up and touch the house. Jem brightened. Touch the house? That's all? Dill nodded. Sure that's all now? I don't want you hollering something different the minute I get back. Yeah, that's all, said Dill. He'll probably come out after you when he sees you in the yard. Then Scout and me will jump on him and hold him down till we can tell him we ain't gonna hurt him. We left the corner, crossed the side street that ran in front of the Radley house, and stopped at the gate. Well, go on, said Dill. Scout and me's right behind you. I'm going, said Jem. Don't hurry me. He walked to the corner of the lot, then back again, studying the simple terrain as if deciding how best to effect an entry, frowning and scratching his head. Then I sneered at him. Jem threw open the gate and sped to the side of the house, slapped it with his palm, and ran back past us, not waiting to see if his foray was successful. Dill and I followed on his heels. Safely on our porch, panting out and out of breath, we looked back. The old house was the same, droopy and sick, but as we stared down the street, we thought we saw an inside shutter move, flick, a tiny, almost invisible movement, and the house was still.
Thank you, Kylie. Next we have Ms. Jackie Burns from Missouri Western State Library, who will be reading A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn.
Thank you for having me here, Dr. Cadden, and everyone else who's sponsored the program and the fellow speakers. Today I'm reading from The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. In this book, Zinn seeks to present the history of America through the lens of common people rather than the elites. It has been challenged in numerous high schools for being un-American and leftist propaganda. It's considered a biased account. But in 2018, a bill that would have banned it was defeated in Arkansas. In response to the bill, the Zinn Education Project sent 700 free copies of The People's History to librarians and teachers across the state. When picking what to read, I wanted to find something timely. And in 2020, there was plenty of timely options. But I decided to read from a chapter that touches me personally, and that is the chapter on American women in early American history. The chapter is titled The Intimately Oppressed. Working in the field of education, I've chosen excerpts that focus on women's education and equality, but I've also included some passages on women's attire. I was amazed that only one of the women in these excerpts was I introduced to during my elementary and secondary education, which occurred in both parochial and public schools. That woman is Elizabeth Cady Stanton. My reading today will end with a quote that is often misattributed to the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who passed away a week and a half ago. It is actually a reference she made as a lawyer when arguing her first case in front of the Supreme Court. In 1821, Emma Willard founded the Troy Female Seminary, the first recognized institution for the education of girls. She wrote later of how she upset people by teaching her students about the human body. Mothers visiting a class at the seminary in the early 30s were so shocked at the sight of a pupil drawing a heart, arteries, and veins on a blackboard to explain the circulation of the blood that they left the room in shame and dismay. To preserve the modesty of the girls and spare them too frequent agitation, heavy paper was pasted over the pages in their textbooks, which depicted the human body. Women struggled to enter the all-male professional schools. Harriet Hunt, a woman physician who began to practice in 1835, was twice refused admission to Harvard Medical School, but she carried on her practice, mostly among children and women. She believed strongly in diet, exercise, hygiene, and mental health. She organized a ladies' physiological society in 1843, where she gave monthly talks. She remained single, defying convention hereto. Elizabeth Blackwell got her medical degree in 1849, having overcome many rebuffs before being admitted to Geneva College. She then set up the New York Dispensary for Poor Women and Children to give poor women an opportunity of consulting physicians of their own sex. In her first annual report, she wrote, "My first medical consultation was a curious experience. In a severe case of pneumonia in an elderly lady, I called in consultation a kind-hearted physician of high standing. This gentleman, after seeing the patient, went with me into the parlor. There he began to walk about the room in some agitation, exclaiming, 'A most extraordinary case. Such a one never happened to me before. I really do not know what to do.' I listened in surprise and much perplexity, as it was a clear case of pneumonia and of no unusual degree of danger, until at last I discovered that his perplexity related to me, not to the patient, and to the propriety of consulting with the lady physician." Oberlin College pioneered in the admission of women. With Lucy Stone, Oberlin found a formidable resistor. She was active in the Peace Society and in anti-slavery work, taught colored students, and organized a debating club for girls. She was chosen to write the commencement address, then was told it would have to be read by a man. She refused to write it. Lucy Stone began lecturing on women's rights in 1847 in a church in Gardner, Massachusetts, where her brother was minister. She was tiny, weighed about 100 pounds, was a marvelous speaker. As lecturer for the American Anti-Slavery Society, she was at various times deluged with cold water, sent reeling by a thrown book, and attacked by mobs. She was one of the first to refuse to give up her name after marriage. She was Mrs. Stone. When she refused to pay taxes because she was not represented in the government, officials took all her household goods in payment, even her baby's cradle. After Amelia Bloomer, a postmistress in a small town in New York State, developed the bloomer, women activists adopted it in place of the old, well-boned bodice, the corset, and petticoats. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was one of the leaders of the feminist movement in this period, told of how she first saw a cousin of hers wearing bloomers. "To see my cousin with a lamp in one hand and a baby in the other, walk upstairs with ease and grace while, with flowing robes, I pull myself up with difficulty, lamp and baby out of the question, readily convinced me that there was sore need of reform in women's dress, and I promptly donned a similar costume." One of the most popular writers of the mid-19th century, the Reverend John Todd, commented on the new feminist mode of dress. Some have tried to become semi-men by putting on the bloomer dress. Let me tell you in a word why it can never be done. It is this: women, robed and folded in long dress, is beautiful. She walks gracefully. If she attempts to run, the charm is gone. Take off the robes, put on the pants, and show the limbs, and grace and mystery are all gone. Women, after becoming involved in other movements of reform, anti-slavery, temperance, dress styles, prison conditions, turned emboldened in experience to their own situation. Angelina Grimke, a Southern white woman who became a fierce speaker and organizer against slavery, saw the movement leading further. Let us all first wake up the nation to lift millions of slaves of both sexes from the dust and turn them into men, and then it will be an easy matter to take millions of females from their knees and set them on their feet, or in other words, transform them from babies into women. In the 1830s, a pastoral letter from the General Association of Ministers of Massachusetts commanded ministers to forbid women to speak from pulpits. Quote, "When she assumes the place and tone of man, we put ourselves in self-defense against her." Sarah Grimke, Angelina's sister, wrote in response a series of articles, Letters on the Condition of Women and the Equality of the Sexes. During the early part of life, my lot was cast among the butterflies of fashionable world and of this class of women. I am constrained to say, both from experience and observation, that their education is miserably deficient, and that they are taught to regard marriage as the one thing needful, the only avenue of distinction. She said, "I ask no favors for my sex. I surrender not our claim to equality. All I ask of our brethren is that they will take their feet from off our necks and permit us to stand upright on the ground which God has designed us to occupy. To me, it is perfectly clear that whatsoever it is morally right for a man to do, it is morally right for a woman to do." Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Next, we have Ms. Catherine Cronk, instructor of theater at Missouri Western, who will be reading from Toni Morrison's Beloved. Catherine? Well, maybe we'll get back to Catherine. Brooke C. Kluge is an advanced instructor of English at Missouri Western State University and will be reading from Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut.
All right, let's do it. Kurt Vonnegut is my favorite American author, and he is no stranger to banned books. One of his most famous books, Slaughterhouse-Five, is number 29 on the American Library Association list of the 100 most frequently challenged books of the 20th century. Cat's Cradle, the book I will be sharing from today, was banned in Strongsville, Ohio in 1972. While no official reason was given, the book was described as completely sick and garbage in the school board minutes. While that ban was overturned in an appeals court in 1976, the book was challenged again repeatedly over the years. Author Michael Crichton said of Vonnegut, quote, "He writes about the most excruciatingly painful things. His novels have attacked our deepest fears of automation and the bomb, our deepest political guilt, our fiercest hatreds and loves," end quote. It is perhaps when we read about excruciatingly painful things, though, is when we grow. Vonnegut said his goal was to catch people before they become generals and senators and presidents and poison their minds with humanity, encourage them to make a better world. All citizens are entitled to hear absolutely any idea anyone from anywhere may care to express, he said. And where did I get the notion there was such an incredible entitlement? I got it from the junior civics course that was given in the 7th grade at Public School 35 in Indianapolis. All these people talk so eloquently about getting back to good old-fashioned values. Well, as an old poop, I can remember back to when we had those old-fashioned values. And I say, let's get back to the good old-fashioned First Amendment of the good old-fashioned Constitution of the United States. And to hell with the censors. Give me knowledge or give me death. So with that in mind, I hope you enjoy these passages from Catch the Cradle. From chapter 1, The Day the World Ended. Call me Jonah. My parents did, or nearly did. They call me John. Jonah, John. If I had been a Sam, I would have been a Jonah still. Not because I have been unlucky for others, but because somebody or something has compelled me to be at certain places at certain times without fail. Conveyances and motives, both conventional and bizarre, have been provided. And according to plan, at each appointed second, at each appointed place, this Jonah was there. Listen. When I was a younger man, 2 wives ago, 250,000 cigarettes ago, 3,000 quarts of booze ago, when I was a much younger man, I began to collect material for a book to be called The Day the World Ended. The book was to be factual. The book was to be an account of what important Americans had done on the day when the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan. It was to be a Christian book. I was a Christian then. I am a Buchananist now. I would have been a Buchananist then if there had been anyone to teach me the bittersweet lies of Bokanon. But Buchananism was unknown beyond the gravel beaches and coral knives that ring this little island in the Caribbean Sea, the Republic of San Lorenzo. We Buchananists believe that humanity is organized into teams that do God's will without ever discovering what they are doing. Such a team is called a cuirass by Bokanon, and the instrument, the can-can, that brought me into my own particular cuirass was the book I never finished, the book to be called The Day the World Ended. From chapter 4, A Tentative Tangling of Tendrils. I intend in this book to include as many members of my cuirass as possible, and I mean to examine all strong hints as to what on earth we collectively have been up to. I do not intend that this book be a tract on behalf of Buchananism. I should like to offer a Buchananist warning about it, though. The first sentence in the books of Bokanon is this: all of the true things I am about to tell you are shameless lies. My Buchananist warning is this: anyone unable to understand how a useful religion can be founded on lies will not understand this book either. So be it. From chapter 18, The Most Valuable Commodity on Earth. When we got into Dr. Breed's inner office, I attempted to put my thoughts in order for a sensible interview. I found that my mental health had not improved. And when I started to ask Dr. Breed questions about the day of the bomb, I found that the public relations centers in my brain had been suffocated by booze and burning cat fur. Every question I asked implied that the creators of the atomic bomb had been criminal accessories to murder most foul. Dr. Breed was astonished, and then he got very sore. He drew back from me and he grumbled, I gather you don't like scientists very much. I wouldn't say that, sir. All your questions seemed aimed at getting me to admit that scientists are heartless, conscienceless, narrow boobies, indifferent to the fate of the rest of human race, or perhaps not really members of the human race at all. That's putting it pretty strong. No stronger than what you're going to put in your book, apparently. I'm sick of people misunderstanding what a scientist is, what a scientist does. I'll do my best to clear up the misunderstanding. In this country, most people don't even understand what pure research is. I'd appreciate it if you tell me what it is. It isn't looking for a better cigarette filter or a softer face tissue or a longer lasting house paint, God help us. Everyone talks about research, and practically nobody in this country is doing it. We're one of the few companies that actually hires men to do pure research. When most other companies brag about their research, they're talking about industrial hat technicians who wear white coats, work out of cookbooks, and dream up improved windshield wipers for the next Oldsmobile. But here, and shockingly few other places in this country, men are paid to increase knowledge, to work toward no end but that. That's very generous of General Forge and Foundry Company. Nothing generous about it. New knowledge is the most valuable commodity on earth. The more truth we have to work with, the richer we become. Had I been a Buchananist then, that statement would have made me howl. And finally, chapter 36, Meow. During my trip to Ilium and to points beyond, a 2-week expedition bridging Christmas, I let a poor poet named Sherman Krebs have my New York City apartment for free. My second wife had left me on the grounds that I was too pessimistic for an optimist to live with. Krebs was a bearded man, a platinum blonde Jesus with spaniel eyes. He was no close friend of mine. I had met him at a cocktail party where he presented himself as national chairman of poets and painters for immediate nuclear war. He begged for shelter, not necessarily bomb-proof, and it happened that I had some. When I returned to my apartment, I found my apartment wrecked by a nihilistic debauch. Krebs was gone, but before leaving, he had run up $300 worth of long-distance calls, set my couch on fire in 5 places, killed my cat and my avocado tree, and torn the door off my medicine cabinet. He wrote this poem, in what proved to be excrement, on the yellow linoleum floor of my kitchen. I have a kitchen, but it is not a complete kitchen. I will not be truly gay until I have a disposal. There was another message written in lipstick and a feminine hand on the wallpaper by my bed. It said, "No, no, no," said Chicken Licken. There was a sign hung around my dead cat's neck. It said, "Meow." I had not seen Krebs since. Nonetheless, I sensed that he was my caress. If he was, he served it as a ring-ring. A ring-ring, according to Bokanon, is a person who steers people away from a line of speculation by reducing that line, with the example of the ring-ring's own life, to an absurdity. I might have been vaguely inclined to dismiss recent events as meaningless, and to go from there to the meaningless of all life. But after I saw what Krebs had done, in particular what he had done to my sweet cat, nihilism was not for me. Somebody or something did not wish me to be a nihilist. It was Krebs' mission, whether he knew it or not, to disenchant me with that philosophy. Well done, Mr. Krebs. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooksy. And now we'll go back to Catherine. Catherine's with us. Great. Catherine is an instructor of theater at Missouri Western and will be reading from Toni Morrison's Beloved. Catherine, we can't hear you. It looks like you're muted now. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. It's the sensors, no doubt. You're on mute right now.
Now can you hear me?
We can.
Great, so sorry about that. Set in Ohio after the American Civil War, Toni Morrison's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel Beloved is based on the true story of Margaret Garner, an enslaved African-American woman who killed her child to spare her a life of slavery. The story of Beloved commences with the hauntings of House 124, the home of Sethi, her daughter Denver, and a spiteful spirit believed to be Sethi's dead child. When Sethi believes that the spirit in human form appears at 124, she not only invites this person into her home, but painful memories as well. Beloved is a novel that explores the topics of motherhood, violence, slavery, and the difficulties of moving forward when you are haunted by the past. In 1998, Beloved was adapted into a film starring Oprah Winfrey, Donald Glover, and Tandy Newton. And for years, Beloved has been among the list of the top 10 most challenged books for the American Library Association. Here are a few examples of recent challenges, both successful and unsuccessful. In 2007, 2 Kentucky parents raised concern to the Eastern High School School Board about violence within Beloved. Beloved was taken off the reading list for AP English Literature the following year and replaced with Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. I should say that I just looked this up recently, and Beloved is now back on the AP English list, and it is number 18 in the country on that AP English list. In 2012, public hearings were held in Missouri's Plymouth Canton School District to discuss whether a list of books, including Beloved, should be banned from AP English literature classes. When two parents complained about the content of the book, the superintendent of the district ordered that it be removed from all English curriculums. And at the public hearing, the couple claimed that the novel, quote, contained violence and sex acts that provide no historical context, end quote. They also argued that the book was at a 5th grade reading level, according to the Lexile Complexity of Language score. Many students who came to the hearing were offended at the idea of banning the book, claiming, quote, African American history is not pretty, but it is education. The school district decided against the ban and declared that the novel could stay in the high school English curriculum. Beloved by Toni Morrison. 124 was spiteful, full of a baby's venom. The women in the house knew it, and so did the children. For years, each put up with the spite in his own way. But by 1873, Sethi and her daughter Denver were its only victims. The grandmother, Baby Shugs, was dead, and the sons, Howard and Bugler, had run away by the time they were 13 years old. As soon as merely looking in a mirror shattered it, that was the signal for Bugler. Or as soon as 2 tiny handprints appeared in the cake, that was it for Howard. Neither boy waited to see more. Another kettle full of chickpeas smoking in a heap on the floor, soda crackers crumbled and strewn in a line next to the door sill. Nor did they wait for one of the relief periods. The weeks, months even, when nothing was disturbed. Nope. Each one fled at once. The moment the house committed what was for him the one insult not to be borne or witnessed a second time. Within 2 months, in the dead of winter, leaving their grandmother, Baby Shugs, Sethi, their mother, and their little sister Denver all by themselves in the gray and white house on Bluestone Road. It didn't have a number then because Cincinnati didn't stretch that far. In fact, Ohio had been calling itself a state only 70 years when first one brother and then the next stuffed quilt packing into his hat, snatched up his shoes, and crept away from the lively spite the house felt for them. Baby Shugs didn't even raise her head. From her sick bed, she heard them go, but that wasn't the reason she lay still. It was a wonder to her that her grandsons had taken so long to realize that every house wasn't like the one on Bluestone Road. Suspended between the nastiness of life and the meanness of the dead, she couldn't get interested in leaving life or living it, let alone the fright of 2 creeping off boys. Her past had been like her present, intolerable. And since she knew death was anything but forgetfulness, she used the little energy left for pondering color. Bring a little lavender in if you got any, pink if you don't. And Sethi would oblige her with anything from fabric to her own tongue. Winter in Ohio was especially rough if you had an appetite for color. Sky provided the only drama, and counting on a Cincinnati horizon for life's principal joy was reckless indeed. So Sethi and the girl Denver did what they could, and what the house permitted, for her. Together, they waged a perfunctory battle against the outrageous behavior of that place, against turned-over slop jars, smacks on the behind, and gusts of sour air, for they understood the source of the outrage as well as they knew the source of light. Baby Shugs died shortly after the brothers left, with no interest whatsoever in their leave taken or hers, and right afterward, Sethi and Denver decided to end the persecution by calling forth the ghost that tried them so. Perhaps a conversation, they thought, an exchange of views or something would help. So they held hands and said, "Come on, come on. You may as well just come on." The sideboard took a step forward, but nothing else did. "Grandma baby must be stopping it," said Denver. She was 10 and still mad at Baby Shugs for dying. Sethi opened her eyes. "I doubt it," she said. "Then why don't it come?" "You're forgetting how little it is," said her mother. "She wasn't even 2 years old when she died. Too little to understand, too little to talk much even." "Maybe she don't want to understand," said Denver. "Maybe, but if she'd only come, I could make it clear to her." Sethi released her daughter's hand, and together they pushed the sideboard back against the wall. Outside, a driver whipped his horse into the gallop local people felt necessary when they passed 124. "For a baby, she throws a powerful spell," said Denver. "No more powerful than the way I loved her," Sethi answered. And there it was again, the unwelcoming cool of unchiseled headstones, the one she selected to lean against on tiptoe, her knees wide open as any grave. Pink as a fingernail it was, and sprinkled with glittering chips. 10 minutes, he said. "You got 10 minutes. I'll do it for free. 10 minutes for 7 letters. With another 10, could she have gotten dearly too? She had not thought to ask him, and it bothered her still that it might have been possible that for 20 minutes, a half hour, say, she could have had the whole thing. Every word she heard the preacher say at the funeral, and all there was to say, surely, engraved on her baby's headstone. Dearly beloved. But what she got, settled for, was the one word that mattered. She thought it would be enough, rutting among the headstones with the engraver, his young son looking on, the anger in his face so old, the appetite in it quite new. That should certainly be enough. Enough to answer one more preacher, one more abolitionist, and a town full of disgust. Counting on the stillness of her own soul, she had forgotten the other one, the soul of her baby girl. Who would have thought that a little old baby could harbor so much rage? Writing among the stones under the eyes of the engraver's son was not enough. Not only did she have to live out her years in a house palsied by the baby's fury at having had its throat cut, but those 10 minutes she spent pressed up against dawn-colored stones studded with star chips, her knees wide open as the grave, were longer than life, more alive, more pulsating than the baby blood that soaked her fingers like oil. "We could move," she suggested once to her mother-in-law. "What'd be the point?" asked Baby Shugs. "Not a house in the country ain't packed to its rafters with some dead Negro's grief. We lucky this ghost is a baby. My husband's spirit was to come back in here, or yours? Pff, don't talk to me. You're lucky. You got 3 left. 3 pulling at your skirts, and just 1 raising hell from the other side. Be thankful, why don't you? I had 8. Every one of them gone away from me. 4 taken and 4 chased. And all I expect worrying about somebody's house into evil." Baby Shugs rubbed her eyebrows. "My firstborn, all I can remember of her is how she loved the burned bottom of bread. Can you beat that? 8 children, and that's all I remember." "That's all you let yourself remember," Sethi had told her. But she was down to 1 herself. 1 alive, that is. The boys chased off by the dead one, and her memory of Bugler was fading fast. Howard at least had a head shape nobody could forget. As for the rest, she worked hard to remember as close to nothing as was safe. Unfortunately, her brain was devious. She might be hurrying across a field, running practically to get to the pump quickly and rinse the chamomile sap from her legs. Nothing else would be in her mind. The picture of the men coming to nurse her was as lifeless as the nerves in her back, where the skin buckled like a washboard. Nor was there the faintest scent of ink or the cherry gum or an oak bark from which it was made. Nothing. Just the breeze cooling her face as she rushed toward water and then sopping the chamomile away with pump water and rags. Her mind fixed on getting every last bit of sap off, on her carelessness in taking a shortcut across the field just to save a half a mile and not noticing how high the weeds had grown until the itching was all the way past to her knees. Then something, the plash of water, the sight of her shoes and stockings awry on the path where she had flung them, or "Here, boy," lapping in the puddle near her feet, and suddenly there was Sweet Home, rolling, rolling, rolling out before her eyes, and although there was not a leaf on that farm that did not make her want to scream, it rolled itself out before her in shameless beauty. It never looked as terrible as it was, and it made her wonder if hell was a pretty place too. Fire and brimstone, all right, but hidden in lacy groves. Boys hanging from the most beautiful sycamores in the world. It shamed her, remembering the wonderful soughing trees rather than the boys. Try as she might to make it otherwise, the sycamores beat out the children every time, and she could not forgive her memory for that. When the last of the chamomile was gone, she went around to the front of the house, collecting her shoes and stockings on the way. As if to punish her further for her terrible memory, sitting on the porch not 40 feet away was Paul D., the last of the Sweet Home men. And although she could never mistake his face for another's, she said, "Is that you?" "What's left?" He stood up and smiled. "How you been, girl, besides barefoot?" When she laughed, it came out loose and young. "Messed up my legs back yonder. Chamomile." He made a face as though tasting a teaspoon of something bitter. "I don't even want to hear about that. I always did hate that stuff." Sethi balled up her stockings and jammed them into her pocket. "Come on in. Porch is fine, Sethi. Cool out here." He sat back down and looked at the meadow on the other side of the road, knowing the eagerness he felt would be in his eyes. 18 years, she said softly. 18, he repeated. "I swear I've been walking every one of them. Mind if I join you?" He nodded toward her feet and began unlacing his shoes. You want to soak them? Let me get you a basin of water. She moved closer to him to enter the house. No, can't baby feet. A whole lot more tramping they got to do yet. You can't leave right away, Paul. Do you got to stay a while? Well, long enough to see baby Shugs anyway. Where is she? Dead. Oh, no. When? 8 years now, almost 9. Was it hard? I hope she didn't die hard. Seppi shook her head. Soft as cream. Being alive was the hard part. Sorry you missed her, though. Is that what you came by for? That's some of what I come for. The rest is you. But if all truth be known, I go anywhere these days, anywhere they let me sit down. You looking good? Devil's confusion. He lets me look good long as I feel bad. He looked at her, and the word bad took on another meaning.
Thank you, Catherine. I want to thank all of our readers for really powerful readings that they provided, sharing some things that are important to them. And I want to encourage all of you listeners, and thank you for listening, to go and find yourself some objectionable, censorable material this week and enjoy yourself and maybe vex others with it. Have a great day.